Any question? Yeah. Yeah, no, Bangley is an amalgam of several people that I know. One of my best friends in Denver has 270 assault rifles in his basement. And he's actually, he's a stable person. I would trust him to look after my cat. So there's that. But yeah, he's definitely a combination of a bunch of people that I know, not one person. Why is Jasper eating dead people? She prefaced this question by saying she loved the book, which is nice. I think somebody had to eat dead people because it wasn't a zombie book. And I love zombie. I have to tell you guys, I really, really love post-apocalyptic movies. And I just think you guys should be grateful that there aren't any zombies in here. I don't know why he eats dead people. I don't know. I mean, I read a lot of Cormac McCarthy, too. I don't know. Good question. Take it under consideration. Yes. She said that in the beginning, she was reading the book, and she did not enjoy it because the language was so broken up. And then as she got into it, she began to like it. And I think what happened is that, I mean, if you think about Hig, he's heavily traumatized. Here's a man who's lost everything. He lost his wife, he lost his unborn child, he pretty soon loses his dog. And, he's heavily traumatized. He's a fractured human being. And think about it, he hasn't spoken to anyone but Bangley for 9 years. So he really hasn't conversed. I mean, those conversations with Bangley are pretty curt. And so think about him sitting down and telling his story. He's going to be clearing his throat for a while, and he's going to be trying to get in touch with his story and trying to get in touch with his feelings. It seemed to make psychological sense. And then you'll notice as he warms to the telling, and especially as he makes human connection, the sentences get longer and smoother. And I'd like to tell you that I planned that, but writers, I mean, I'm going to tell you guys the secret about fiction writers. They really, really like to seem smart. And, but really what's happened is most of the stuff they do, they just do it, and they don't even know why. And then they make up reasons later. I read to the top booksellers in Paris. Like, this is haute couture, this is the high literary scene in Paris. And I read to these guys. And my editor, who's the senior editor of one of the highest literary houses in France, started talking about the extended conceits and metaphors in the book. And when someone talks about that in French, you start to believe them. And I was just like looking at her, and I was like, God, that guy Heller's a genius. And I was sorely tempted to go along with it, but then I finally had to tell him that, I just wrote it all down, and then I thought that was a wonderful, critical approach, and so I don't know. But that's how the book got written. Later, I thought it made psychological sense that it would have been written like that. And I have gotten a lot of emails from English teachers and people like that said, we teach that sentences have whatever sentences have, and, you can't, but, period, is not a sentence, and then they always end it by saying, but, in the end, it was really effective, and the class liked it. Yeah. He said, I'm reading from a book and not a device. Yeah, books live. Books live. They feel good. And they smell good. And we love books. And over our dead body, it's like those bumper stickers. You're going to pry it out of my dead fingers. Yeah, let me take two more questions. Yeah. What did Jasper mean to me in this book? Well, I grew up with dogs, and I lived with dogs for many years, and I don't have a dog now. And as I wrote the book, Jasper became really, really real to me. And I mean, the strange thing about writing fiction, I think maybe reading it too, there's a wonderful article in the New York Times, you could Google it, Our Minds on Fiction, and it's what happens to the brain when it reads fiction. And what happens is, when they do the MRIs and stuff and study, is that there's no difference in blood flow and neuron activation when you read that someone's hand felt like roughed out leather than when you touch roughed out leather. And so I think we get transported. And the thing about Jasper is that Jasper feels to me like a dog that I had. And I remember him. And I carry him around in my heart and my soul like a dog that I had, which is so strange and beautiful. And so, when he died, I sort of felt it coming, because as he was walking, he was so stiff, and, he got tired. And when he died, I wasn't sure he was going to die. And when he did, I lost it. And I was in my coffee shop, and I was just like, I had tears just streaming onto the table. And I know people were looking at me going, he's going through a really bad divorce. And, but I felt that. And so Jasper is in this place in my heart, like this dog that I had, and that I love, and that I mourn still. Thanks for that question. It's beautiful. So I'm going to take one more, and then I'll read last page. Yeah. Did I take flying lessons, or am I a pilot? A few years ago, my friend graduated from law school in Missoula, Montana, and what he wanted to do was go on a river trip on the Middle Fork of the Flathead. So we put our kayaks in a bush plane in Kalispell, Montana. We flew into Schaefer Meadows, and it's a 4-day trip, and it's a beautiful river trip. But I realized at the end, what I really loved most was the flight in. We were flying so close to the ridges that you could see elk tracks in the snow and stuff, and I was just like, I was flabbergasted. And so I asked, through the headset, I asked the pilot, and he was kind of a cowboy, and I asked him, I said, hey, how could I learn this? Like, how quick could I do it? Like, could I get a magazine assignment, And he had like a handlebar mustache, and he was real brash, and he said, oh yeah, Pete, you come up here, give me $5,000 in 3 weeks of your time, we'll get her done. And so he got fired 2 weeks later for drinking on the job. But the chief pilot at Kalispell, at the FBO, is a guy named Dave Horner, who turns out to be one of the greatest bush pilots that ever lived. He has 30,000 hours flying grizzly bears, wolves, and wolverines. So radio tracking animals low and slow, 30,000 hours, and the man's still alive. He's remarkable. And he's the only one that many wildlife biologists in Montana will fly with. And he said, you come up, we'll do it, and the article will be how to be a bush pilot in 3 weeks. And I got Men's Journal to sign on. They sent me up there, and I didn't even know what a flap was when I showed up in Kalispell. And they gave me this book. Jeppesen has this book, and they gave it to me, and they said, you look pretty smart, here, good luck. This is a book that people usually do ground school for like a year, and I took it. I was at the one Thai restaurant in Kalispell every night, eating like green chicken curry, reading, about controlled airspace and ailerons, and 3 times a day I flew with Dave and one of his other instructors, and he'd been a logger, and he never graduated high school, and we'd come into like Polson, and I'd be like this, on my 3rd day, and he'd go, Helton, I'd be, yeah. He's like, you drive a truck? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you drive a motorcycle? I'm like, yeah. He's like, this isn't either one, God damn it, it's a bird. Light adjustments, and then we'd land, and he'd look at me and go, you came in like a sick goose. That was atrocious. And for a guy like him to haul out a word like atrocious and use it on me, it was like a great honor, And in 20 days, I got my ticket, and sort of like license to kill sort of thing. And I went home, and a year later, he called me up and he said, hey, my friend is a biologist at Missoula. He's in his 70s. He can't fly anymore. He has this 182. Its tail number is November 6, 333 Alpha, 333 Alpha. And it's a beautiful old plane. It's a 56 Cessna, cream and blue. and you need to buy it. And it was really cheap because the engine was timed out. And, you have to rebuild the engine. Being me, I thought, well, I can nurse the engine along for a couple of years. And I did, and the engine went out on me in like 3 months over the divide. And my wife was with me, and I was like, I think we got to turn back to Erie, see if we can make Erie. And she's like, good idea. She's like super calm. So anyway, the plane that I fly is the Beast, and it is at a hangar in Erie, and that's how that happened. So I want to read this last page and end with this. One critic called The Dog Stars a cozy apocalyptic novel. And he clearly didn't do the body count. But I always think it's fun. I think it's fun to read the one cozy page. The afternoon was fine, with just a light breeze stirring off the mountains, warm in the sun but almost winter cold in the shadow of the hangar. I had the wood stove going and the kettle on, steaming. I made tea from the jar of summer flowers, leaves that I dried, wild strawberry, black raspberry, mint, and sat in Valdez, the recliner I'd pulled out of the home entertainment room of one of the mansions. It was named after the Exxon tanker that had wrecked and spilled in Alaska. It was a split double recliner for husband and wife, presumably, but now for me and Jasper, with a lever on each side and covered in the finest calfskin. It was very soft. I put an heirloom quilt on his side, patched with prints and blues and yellows, and with a repeating pattern of a log cabin made from squares and triangles of printed cloth, every piece different, but with the same twist of smoke coming out of each chimney, paisley or polka dot, or ribbed with color. So it gave an impression of a fanciful village, evenly spread over a country of geometric fields and flowering crops, and at a retiring hour when everyone was indoors enjoying the warmth of a fire, as we were. It was comforting to look at, and comfortable sitting in the deep chair in the waves of heat from the stove, levered halfway back and drinking tea. I could almost imagine that it was before, that Jasper and I were off somewhere on an extended sojourn and would come back one day soon, that all would come back to me, that we were not living in the wake of disaster, had not lost everything but our lives. Same as yesterday, standing in the garden. It caught me sometimes that this was okay, just this, that simple beauty was still bearable barely, and that if I lived moment to moment, garden to stove, to the simple act of flying, I could have peace. It was like I was living in a doubleness, and the doubleness was the virulent insistence of life in its blues and greens laid over the scaling grays of death, and I could toggle one to the other, step into and out of as easily as I might step into and out of the cold shadow of the hangar just outside. Or that I didn't step, but the shadow passed over like the shadow of a cloud that covered my arms with goosebumps and passed. Life and death lived inside each other. That's what occurred to me. Death was inside all of us, waiting for warmer nights, a compromised system, a beetle, as in the now dying black timber on the mountains, and life was inside death, virulent and insistent as a strain of flu. How it should be. It was memory that threw me. I tried hard not to remember, and I remembered all the time. And I want to end with the poem at the back of the book. The poem by Li Shangying was the poem that I read for David by the side of the river 25 years ago. And it's stayed with me ever since. And it's interesting how in fiction the things that are important to you in your life just come back and come into it. When will I be home? When will I be home? I don't know. In the mountains, in the rainy night, the autumn lake is flooded. Someday we will be back together again. We will sit in the candlelight by the west window, and I will tell you how I remembered you tonight on the stormy mountain. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Peter. Let's give him a great round of applause. That was amazing. So thank you. That wraps up our 2014 novel idea. If you have any friends or relatives who would love to see Peter Jackson, come out to Sisters High School tomorrow for the final performance. Thank you.